For more on the story, we've got Ollie Barrett joining us from London, getting us the latest on the development in Stamford Bridge and Chelsea club in particular. Good afternoon, Ollie. Well, this particular decision that the club and the manager has taken, is not a surprise when it comes to Stamford Bridge and Chelsea club in particular. First of all, was this decision a surprise? Or, it was very much on the expected lines?
It was expected as a possibility. I think we can put it that way. And one of the reasons for that, Anil, is that in the last couple of weeks, really, of the season, Mauricio Pochettino himself, when he was asked about his future at Stamford Bridge, had made it pretty clear that he wasn't at all clear whether he was going to be retained in the job, but had actually also gone further than that and had insisted that part of the decision making about whether he'd be at Stamford Bridge still next season was down to him and his staff and whether they wanted to be around or not. We did always know that there was going to be an end-of-season review between Mauricio Pochettino and the heads of football at Chelsea. They were going to look back at the season that had just gone and work out what to do next. And part of the reason we know that they wanted to do that was that Pochettino only had one more year on his contract. That would have taken him into June of 2025. The difficulty with June of 2025 is that Chelsea are due at that point to be taking part in the Club World Cup, and so Chelsea really had to make a decision of some sort now. They needed to decide whether to part ways with Pochettino or really to extend his contract. They didn't want to go into next season with Pochettino less than a year left on his contract, and that contract due to expire in the middle of a major tournament in which Chelsea would be competing. When it came to the end of season review on Monday and Tuesday, our understanding really is that both sides decided that it wasn't really working in the way that they would like it to. Pochettino not necessarily enamoured with the idea that Chelsea want the football structure to work at the club and his role related to some of the other coaches and the directors of football, and also some reports that perhaps some in and around the Chelsea football hierarchy, but also on the board and at ownership level, weren't completely convinced by Pochettino's training methods and perhaps some of the tactics that had been employed through the season. There's been some surprise about the way that this unfolded because Chelsea finished the season so well, but I think the club had tried to look at that end of season review in the round, and when they went into the season at the beginning of it, they absolutely would have been targeting Champions League. That was not achieved, even if Chelsea did finish the season well.
Ollie, do you get the sense that, managers who question owners, especially when it comes to Stamford Bridge and Chelsea in particular, managers who tend to question the owners, always end up on the wrong side of continuing with the club for, a long string of time?
Well, we have two recent examples of that at Chelsea. One of those is now Pochettino himself. The other is Thomas Tuchel. Of course, Thomas Tuchel had been coming recently off the back of a Champions League win, but because he didn't really seem aligned with the ownership's vision for the future, the transfer policy, the way that they wanted him to operate in the football structure at the club, he was let go as well. They brought in Graham Potter. That didn't work out, but he was removed from his post because of results more than anything else. But yes, Pochettino and Tuchel just showing that at Chelsea nowadays, if you are not aligned with the ownership group and the directors of football when it comes to their strategy for the club, it's going to be very difficult for you indeed. Now, the reverse of that is something that is being raised by some fans as well. They say, well, look, the ownership board and the directors of football at Chelsea, their strategy was to bring in Pochettino, and so they have failed in their choice of manager if they now, a year later, find that they've got someone in post that they can't really work with very well. So there will be all sorts of concern among Chelsea fans about what comes next. That said, partly because of Pochettino's history as Spurs manager, he wasn't welcomed with open arms by all Chelsea fans, and some Chelsea fans had been calling for him to go. So I think it's a move that divides the Chelsea fan base. Of course, now what they all want to hear, the Chelsea fans, is exactly what comes next.
Looking at the 2023-24 season, Ollie, is there a sense that one gets, it's a jinx season for, football managers across the 20 clubs. You have 3 managers who left. In the last 1 week, you've almost seen 4 managers departing, leaving the clubs. Things not looking good, especially for managers, handling English clubs in particular in the season gone by.
Yeah, I think that's long been the case. I mean, you could also point to some examples of managers who have been there for some time. Jurgen Klopp leaving at a time of his choosing. Pep Guardiola still in post, but it'll be up to him, I think, when he decides to leave Manchester City. Thomas Frank has been at Brentford now for a number of years. Eddie Howe has been given some time at Newcastle United. How much time he actually gets if next season doesn't go according to plan very much remains to be seen. But I think anyone who takes on a Premier League job at the moment knows that if results don't come quickly, they are likely to find themselves in a very difficult spot. There are some managers who've been given time. I've named some of them. Mikel Arteta at Arsenal is another example of that. But there are also a lot of clubs who will move quickly if they think they need to, because whatever their target is, be it safeguarding Premier League safety, if it's trying to get into the Champions League spots or trying to make European football of another type of competition, the bosses of these clubs, the owners of these clubs, know that they'll be losing out to the tune of many, many millions of dollars if they don't hit their targets in any given year, and particularly if they end up being relegated from the Premier League. And that, I think, is why so many of them are minded to change quickly if they feel they need to. But we should say that some of those examples that I've reeled off of managers who've been given time, they populate the list of managers also recently who've been doing well.
Ollie, English football has the culture of managers, running the show also as coaches. Do you get the sense Chelsea is looking for a coach rather than a manager? And, whenever we've seen, coaches getting promoted, Chelsea's had great success. The first time they won the Champions League, it was an assistant coach who led the team to victory. So do you see, Chelsea needing more of a coach, less of a manager, somebody who can take that, wear that hat, more suitable for the job?
I think that characterization is quite accurate when it comes to Chelsea, and some of the reporting suggests that Pochettino, for example, was not best pleased by the idea of Chelsea bringing in a set-piece coach. He, as head coach, thought that that was really his role. And it also appears that he hasn't necessarily got the same strategic views and vision as the directors of football and, as I say, some of the ownership at the club. So you would expect, therefore, that this time around Chelsea will try and take great care to bring someone in who is happy with where Chelsea put them in the structure of the management of the football club. Another recent example of this, which Chelsea may well be looking at, is of course Liverpool. Jurgen Klopp grew to become this all-powerful manager at the club. Really anything that he said at Liverpool would really be enacted, certainly in the latter years. But Liverpool have decided now to hire a head coach. Arne Slot has moved into a role of head coach. That's where he will fit in the football structure that's been rejigged at Liverpool. So Chelsea's not the only club to want to operate in this way. Some of that, though, in terms of how it all plays out, of course, depends on the success of the manager. If the coach, if he's called a coach, goes on to be very, very successful very quickly and has years and years of Premier League and Champions League success, then they are going to become, you would expect, the most powerful person at any given club if they bring that level of success. But certainly it looks like Chelsea might be heading down the Liverpool route for their next appointment and trying to bring someone in who might be best described as coach rather than manager.
Well, I'm just looking at the grapevine that's coming in from England. Pochettino is expected or on the radar of Manchester United and Bayern Munich, while loose talks coming in from London, East London, is that Thomas Tuchel could be the man who will be handed back the reins of managing Stamford Bridge. We're going to leave it there. Thank you. Appreciate you joining us this afternoon, getting us the latest on the English Football Club and the English season ahead.